Andrew Scheer has a message for Canada's premiers. His party would put an end to backseat driving, let the provinces take full control of the wheel. He's promising to draft what he calls an interprovincial trade agreement, call a first minister's meeting within 100 days, appoint an interprovincial trade minister to his front bench. But is his vision to unite the province, free the beer, get trade going, nothing more than a pre-election platitude? We've heard this from almost every government, Stephen Harper's government, Justin Trudeau's government. And as the growing number of Conservative premiers, though, becoming Scheer's band of brothers, that maybe actually makes this happen. Let's find out. Joining me now, two of Canada's sharper political minds. Kathleen Wynne is the former Ontario Premier and a current Ontario MPP. She's in Toronto. And James Moore is the former Conservative Industry Minister. He's in Vancouver. And both of them, well, I'm not going to say you butted heads on this file, but you certainly worked on this file. Welcome to the program, James Moore. Let me start with you. I mean, Andrew Scheer is saying something that everybody sort of thinks seems normal, like if you can have free trade with other countries, why not between provinces? Is it actually feasible? Does he actually have a new idea here that you never tried?
Yeah, you can. But the biggest obstacle historically is the lack of the willingness of provinces to surrender some sovereignty, frankly, to an adjudicating body with some teeth who will actually adjudicate the disputes between province to province and from business to provinces who may regulate or put up trade barriers between each other. That's the biggest barrier, because the case for greater east-west flow of goods, jobs, services, and opportunities and investment is a no-brainer.
Kathleen, I'd love your perspective, because you were in this thing. Yeah. Is it the provinces that say we don't want to cede authority to this independent body?
So James is absolutely right. And James, you were minister when we were actually having this conversation at the Premier's table. And you had put out a number. You had said, there was $50 billion. I think you said $50 billion worth of productivity and trade lost because of a lack of a decent free trade agreement among provinces. So we worked, and interestingly, one of Doug Ford's Conservative ministers in Ontario stood up the other day in the legislature and said, Ontario has been a leader on this file. And in fact, James, I think you'll remember, Brad Dogood was our Minister of Economic Development and Trade, and he led the way to a better agreement on internal trade in Canada. We agreed on a dispute resolution mechanism, which is exactly the thing that you're talking about. Because, Evan, let's face it, there are always going to be issues, whether it's wine or whether it's beer or whether it's specifications on interprovincial trucking. There are going to be issues that are going to come up, and so there has to be a mechanism whereby you can resolve them. We had worked on that as a country, and I think that there may be some fine tuning, but you're not going to get any argument from me that we need to continue to make progress.
But how is Andrew Scheer going to do it? My case is, I know you guys all worked on it, but what is Andrew Scheer going to bring to the table? Is it the fact that he's got a lineup of sort of more conservative premiers? I mean, Justin Trudeau had Liberal premiers. He didn't really do much on that. Kathleen Wynne, does Andrew Scheer have a real opportunity to kind of finally move this ball down the field?
You know what I think is actually happening, Evan, is that this is an area where there has been progress made, and he can probably make a bit more progress, but I don't think there's going to be an exponential leap forward. It's still, there's going to be some progress, but because the foundation has already been laid by those previous premiers, he's actually got an opportunity to say, we've done a great thing here. We've actually started to use the dispute resolution mechanism. He won't say that the Liberal premiers put in place, but in fact, we were responding to James Moore's kind of challenge to us, and it was good. It was good. Okay. James, actually, you pushed us, right?
James Moore, I mean, I look at, Alberta and BC, I mean, they're ready to turn off the taps on wine, on oil. It doesn't sound like there's a movement of freer trade right now. It's as one province is using trade, frankly, as a stick on other issues. What does that tell you?
Well, we have to remind ourselves that four provinces came together in Charlottetown in 1864 and decided to create a federal government. We have a confederation that is very decentralized in terms of its power. I retreat often on this file to Peter Lougheed, who said when he was Premier, "I'm an Albertan and a proud Albertan, but I'm a Canadian first." And we need more premiers in this country and more provincial leaders, again, who are prepared to surrender some of that sovereignty and to reach out and do that. And I hope that, look, Andrew Scheer, there's no question, has obviously a great relationship with Premier Moe and Premier Kenney and Premier Ford and others around the country. And hopefully we can draw and move forward on this. But, you know, I think the real weaponizing force behind all of this that actually may cause premiers to do what Premier Wynne has described, what I believe is the biggest obstacle, is if, frankly, the USMCA doesn't move forward and the U.S. Congress is intransigent and won't allow the New Deal to pass. If Donald Trump decides to abrogate NAFTA, is kind of hitting the nuclear button to try to push this process forward or to do everything he can, then we're going to be standing here in Canada where 75% of our export market is to the United States, and that relationship is going to be untenable, rising tensions with China, an uncertain situation in Europe. We need to get on with it. You know, let's get Canadian goods moving east and west. It is indefensible for us to keep doing this.
Meantime, Kathleen Wynne. Yeah, go ahead, Kathleen Wynne.
Yeah, Evan, I just think that we have to be realistic about what exactly is the problem here. Yes, I agree. BC and Alberta are in a very rough period right now. I mean, obviously they've got a huge issue that looks intractable at this point. But there are a million other things that provinces can tackle and are looking at every single day, Evan. And because there is a dispute mechanism there, it is possible to make progress. I hope that happens, and I fully expect that it will, because when the premiers sit at the table, to James's point, when they sit together, you'd be hard pressed to be able to tell who's what party stripe, because it may be that with the Prime Minister there, it becomes more obvious. But with the premiers there, they are all looking out for making sure that business in their province is thriving. And that's what it's about.
All right, I got to leave it there. Fascinating discussions. I always am a little skeptical about the promise of the big provincial breakthrough. It's only been 150 odd years in the making. Kathleen Wynne and James Moore, great to have both of you on the program.